Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Spice Route. Today, we're going to show you a traditional Andhra recipe, which is otherwise known as Sorakaya chanagapappu, or in Hindi, lauki chanadal. In Tamil, Sorakaya chanadal. Again, I don't know what chanadal is in Tamil. So, having said that, the ingredients that we need for this dish are: this is sorakai or lauki, or otherwise known as bottle gourd. We've cut that, we've removed the seeds, we've cut that into small pieces and put that in water. Otherwise, it'll get dark. We have about 1.5 cups of chanadal that has been soaked and then boiled for about 10 minutes, and we've just strained it here. We have about 2 small Roma tomatoes diced. We have 1 onion that has been chopped. We have a little bit of cilantro, and the spices that we are going to use for this are turmeric, about less than half a teaspoon. This is coriander powder. This is about 1 teaspoon. Kashmiri red chili powder for color. This is about 1.5 teaspoons. This is regular red chilies for about half a teaspoon. A few curry leaves. We have hing. We have salt, and we have oil. A little bit of ground green chilies. This is not a paste per se, but we coarse ground green chilies. Because of the quarantine, we have it frozen, so we're going to use that. We also have for tempering jeera and mustard seeds. Alright, so we put the pan on high flame right now to begin with, and I'm adding about 2 to 2.5 teaspoons of oil, just regular vegetable oil. And to this vegetable oil, I'm just going to first run it around the pan so that it coats the entire pan. I am going to add about half a teaspoon of mustard seeds. Once we start seeing that the mustard seeds start initial spluttering, which will take about maybe about 10 or 15 seconds at high heat, what we do is we also add, you can start hearing the mustard seeds splutter right now. We add a little bit of hing, about I would say less than 1/4 teaspoon of hing. Again, swirl it around really well. Add approximately half a teaspoon of jeera. At this point, I would also add the curry leaves that I have, and I'm going to tear the curry leaves up a little bit. It always adds to the flavor because it opens up the aromas of the curry leaves. And you don't need the curry leaves to really get fried or anything in the oil. The idea is for it to cook eventually. I'm going to reduce the flame to medium at this point once the tempering is done, and I add the onions. In this recipe, it is not important for us to cook down the onions until they get brown or anything like that. The idea is to get the raw smell out of the onions. You'll have noticed I'm not using any ginger garlic paste in this recipe. So for those of you that don't eat garlic or ginger, this is a perfect recipe to go to. So we will basically fry this for less than 3 to 4 minutes, and we should be then adding the rest of the ingredients. So folks, it has been about 3 minutes since the onion has been cooking. At this point, I add the tomatoes. Remember, the tomatoes also add moisture to the gravy. So I'm going to add the tomatoes. You would notice that I haven't added any of the masalas. And what I'm going to do is truly just give this a swirl so that the moisture from the tomato can scrape out all of the goodness from the pan. And at this point, I would basically add two things. One is I add all of the green chili paste. I did not want the green chilies to be fried. That's why I'm adding it at this point. If I'd wanted it to be fried, I would have added it earlier. So right now it's just going to mix up with the gravy, and I am going to swirl this up a little bit. Again, this is a very easy recipe for you to follow at home, and because everything goes in almost at the same time. So what I'm going to do right now is, once I've swirled the green chilies a little bit, I am going to add my powdered spices. It's the dhania, it's the turmeric, it's the Kashmiri red chilies, and the regular red chili powder. Over to this. Right at this point, I would add about half a cup of water so that the spices don't get burnt. And that is half a cup of water so that the spices don't get burnt. Notice that I have not added any salt as yet. Some people add salt. I personally do as well when I want the onions to fry up a lot. In this case, I will add the salt once I've added all of the other ingredients and the vegetables and stuff. The very last thing we typically add is the chanadal to this. So once we have mixed this up a little bit, what I would do is I add the lauki to this, or the sorakaya. So it's in the water, so I just take it out of the water and I add that to the mix. And then once the lauki is all added, I mix it up. Another thing for everyone to remember is bottle gourd or lauki is filled with a lot of water. It releases a lot of moisture into the dish. What we are going to do in this dish is close the lid and cook it for about 15 minutes or so until the lauki becomes tender. And right at that point, we would add the chana dal, the cilantro that we've cut, and we'll close it out. But for now, what we're going to do is, notice I have not added any water. I'm going to reduce the flame to a low, and I'm going to close this up and let it cook and steam in its own water for about 15 minutes. It has been about 15 minutes since our sorakaya or lauki has been cooking, and it looks like it is about 80% done, and we're removing the lid. You would notice that there's a lot of water. When I try and move this around, it is not stuck to the pan either, and it has cooked fairly well. This is the point when I add a couple more things, and that is, so we are going to add, we added the salt, we're going to add the cooked chana dal. Remember that the chana dal is not very it's not super cooked, or it's not mushy. It's still at a point where when you press it with your hand, it just breaks like that. And we are going to just add all of that chana dal in there. What we are also going to do is mix it up and add another half a cup of water to this whole thing so that it cooks the remaining part of the chana dal. Just so you know, the chana dal is about 90% cooked. We need it another 10% cooked. So we're going to add half a cup of water to this, and that is going to cook it all the way to the end. That's about half a cup of water. what we also are going to do is add all of the cilantro to it at this point, because I want the gravy to absorb the flavors of the cilantro. So I add all the cilantro to it. If you have not already noticed, I love cilantro. It's one of the best herbs that we have in Indian cooking, and sometimes a lot of it adds a lot of flavor. So I use a lot of cilantro in my cooking, and you would notice that as you start seeing more of my videos. So we mix this up and we increase the heat to high for just another 30 seconds or so. Close this up, and what we do is the heat is increased. It is starting to get hot on the lid here, and right at that point we bring it down to low, and we're going to let it cook for about 10 minutes, and the dish is absolutely ready. We will show it to you at that. We are about 12 to 15 minutes out when we've been cooking this on low heat. So I'm going to remove this. You're going to look at all the yummy goodness from the Sorakaya chanagapappu kura, or the lauki chanadal ki subzi. And what we are doing here is just mixing it up. This is pretty much ready to consume. You can have this along with rotis or with rice. This is an absolutely fabulous combination with rice and ghee. So enjoy, make this at home, and have a lot of fun making this at home. I'm going to just plate this in our small glass bowl here. Remember that you have to make sure you switch off the gas, which I did not do, and my wife, who's the videographer, just did that for me. And we have the final dish ready, like I mentioned, served for everyone to enjoy. We're going to have this for dinner tonight. Thank you.